Welcome, dear students. In the current session, I would talk about the impact of the 17th century. I hope and expect that by the end of this session, you would be able to understand what was the impact of the happenings during the 17th century on the development of English language. Well, my dear students, during the Renaissance period, the social, commercial, and technological advancements that took place and all the intellectual forces that were at work, they, played a vital role in shaping and forming the English language. The language was given a lot of freedom, a lot of foreign influences took place, a lot of expansion happened. In the middle and later part of the 17th century, the evolution and interaction of these forces now led to a culmination. A series of crises was a result of all of this. At this time point, what I'd like to explain here is that, because Renaissance was a period of constant development, constant, improvement in language in terms of additions of vocabulary, experimentation with, language structures, choices that were made, lexical choices in writing, etc. Now, everybody was experimenting with language, everybody was eager, everybody was keen to try new expressions in language. Of course, it had some impact. And what was the impact? The impact was that as a result of this too much of experimentation and this too much of freedom that was enjoyed at the individual level, now language had so much in it that what was right and what was wrong became a serious question. Alongside, on the social and political level, certain crises were going on in the 17th century. There were political crises, there were social crises. And, in the process of intermingling with the previous influences of, the impact of Renaissance, again, language was taking a new direction. When we talk of the crisis during this time, I would say there were two important things that happened. First was in 1640, the English Civil War. And the second was in 1660, that was the restoration of Charles II. Closely linked to these political events were the linguistic concerns. Matters of language and language use were a constant source of trouble for the intellectuals. In fact, it is very hard to trace the impact of these political happenings directly on the language, but of course, because they changed the socio-cultural context, so indirectly they were linked with the language changes. Now, during these times, my dear students, the new scientists and philosophers, they were, working against, they were opponents to the religious zeal of the times, of the occult scientists who were working there, who were accompanied by all the astrologists who were talking about beliefs in astrology and in alchemy and in witchcraft. So, basically what was happening, after, all that revolutionary knowledge that came through, the Renaissance route, now, there was certain, ambiguity about, certain things. There were contradictions in the belief and doubt. In this context, radical nonconformists and perceived fanatics were lumped together under the label enthusiasts. These enthusiasts were the writers, and the scientists. They were brought together, under the Royal Society that was, working for, or that was planning to work for, language reform. Now what happened? Supporters of rational science such as Henry Moore, Thomas Spratt, John Wilkins, and Robert Boyle, these were the people, they were very much disturbed by the ranting language of the enthusiasts. All the language that was used by these people, who would say that all kind of experimentation could be done and all the new possibilities could be explored. The kind of language that was brought in, these conservatives were against that. More conservative minds were concerned about the very fact of public expression and the sheer bulk of controversial publications. Now, through the printing press and the spread of knowledge during the Renaissance period, what happened? Knowledge was spread everywhere. There were a lot of publications. Books were available to all kind of people. They were available to the poor people, to the masses, to every kind of reader. The result was there were certain materials that, in terms of language, they were controversial. The linguistic choices that were used in them. No longer you would find the learned discourse restricted to the upper class. Now, from the elite class, it moved on down to, I would say, to the masses. Practitioners of natural sciences condemned the enthusiasts and the old authorities. So it led towards a kind of open controversy. The controversy was either it was safe or it was beneficial for the society, to indulge in these kind of discussions. Because before this contradiction had never emerged. Now, in the first place, what was difficult to decide was whether to go into this kind of controversy is okay or not. Is it good for the society or not? The result was that 17th century can be equated with a focused public consciousness about language. However, interestingly, most of the educated class people and the upper class people, they recoiled to, they recoiled from the solution that was offered by Thomas Hobbes. Actually, he proposed that all the power, be it political or social or linguistic, it should be given to one authority. That is how it could be controlled. In 1660, Royal Society was working as a coordinator or as a clearing house for English language, particularly for the scientific endeavors, and it proposed a solution. The key factor of the solution was to use English language for, the purposes of scientific endeavors recording, and the English prose of scientists should be stripped of all the ornamentation and emotive language. It was decided that language would be made plain and it would be made simple to suit the discourse of science. This led towards the efforts to design a universal language. So there was an intense awareness of the importance of language in everyday life. John Locke's wish was that this kind of, recognition or this kind of standardization could be brought, but the Royal Society could not impose it to all the life. So, it started with the, application of simple English for the science. Then the desire, especially of John Locke's and other who were supporters, was to spread it to all the domains of life. However, practically it could not happen. Even the Royal Society could not create a plain style.